So how you all doing? Oh, come on, more energy than that. I know they were out of leaded coffee. How y'all doing? Woo! So how many women out there are in IT? Happy Women in Technology Month. Thank you all for coming. And yes, I do have note cards because that's how I roll. How many people out here have AI running on their systems? But before you answer that, there's two types of AI, right? There's traditional AI, and I'll read you the definition. Traditional AI systems are primarily used to analyze data and make predictions. So how many out there are using AI? Should be 100%, especially if you're using SIM, DLP, if you had data analytics, if you run anything with a macro in Excel, right, you're looking to predict data. So how many people actually go ahead and have generative AI? So generative AI, Gen AI, can literally take that information, it can create new information. How many people are using that personally first? Oh, come on, I know more of you guys are using that personally. How many of them are using that in their networks? How many hope and pray that they're not using them in the networks that they don't know about? Yeah, note to self out there, if you're blocking, I probably can use an Excel and just call it that way. So it's being used out there along those lines. And then the other question we wanted to make sure that we have a little barometer where people are. How many people are literally battling with the business every single day about trying to get all these great tools in and use them so they can create new data, do analytics? And a lot of times they get them out there and we in IT don't even know. How many are struggling with those challenges right now? How many don't want to admit that they're struggling with those challenges right now? So as we go through this panel, what we're going to try and do, obviously there's a lot of material to cover. We're going to hit on management. We're going to hit on trying to handle risk. We're going to talk about a little bit about data and it going outside your network, what's coming in your network, and we're going to talk a little bit about compliance. But there's no way we can cover every single aspect. But if you have a question that's not addressed here, it'll be probably addressed in one of the other panels. And if it's not addressed there, you guys can reach out to me personally on LinkedIn or through Casey, and I'll do my best to go ahead and make sure you get that answer for you. I'll reach out to the panel and all the other experts here. So promise that, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. So with that, I am Dr. Rebecca Nguyen. You can check me out on LinkedIn. I do cybersecurity strategy work for companies, not only here in the United States, but in Canada, Europe, as well as in Australia. You can reach out to me to be able to do that. I do evaluations a lot for mergers and acquisitions. And a lot of times you're like, do we have the right team in place to get this project done? I also have the Soulful CXO podcast, which is a top inspirational technology podcast. Please check it out. Next Tuesday, I do have Sarah Armstrong-Smith, who is the Chief Cybersecurity Advisor for Microsoft, and that is a masterclass, which is free. That's on Tuesday. It will be on all podcast channels. It's on YouTube too, and you can do replay. So please go ahead and check it out. So without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce the panel. Go ahead first.
Hi, I'm Michael Hay. I work for Hitachi Vantara. This is actually my second tour at Hitachi. That's relevant because I left doing some interesting things with data and financial services and oil and gas. Went off to do a little consulting and work at Teradata for a number of years. So that kind of puts me in an interesting spot to come back and what I see as a wonderful opportunity with a confluence of good things and, I guess, challenging things. Some of the good things are many of the items that you just talked about with generative AI and learning how to manage your data. And other challenging things are market forces like Broadcom's interesting musings with licensing that may be sucking up the vacuum of funding to do fascinating things with data and AI. So I'm Michael.
Morning, everybody. Scott Heikar. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Benchmark Electronics. We're about a $3 billion public company. We manufacture other people's electronic products in factories around the world. So medical, industrial, aerospace and defense, commercial, compute, anything that starts with a circuit board. So it's a fascinating business.
Thanks. Hi, can you guys hear me? It's on? Hi. Yes? No? No? Hello? I have a loud voice. I could not use the mic. Hi, I'm Jill Rhodes. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for a healthcare company called Option Care Health. We're a $5 billion public company. I've been there for about 8 years, started the program from scratch. Before that, I spent a lot of time in the intel and national security world, and I'm a lawyer by training.
Good morning, everybody. Mike Shanko, now former SVP and CIO for Blue Yonder. First off, anybody in here an Office fan? The TV show The Office? So I should say I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I got all my management training at Dunder Mifflin, and I'm here to share that with you today. So in all seriousness, I've been here in the Valley for about 8 years. I've got about 30-year background in leading technology organizations, cybersecurity organizations, through transformation, through stabilization efforts, and been able to do that through just really strong culture teams, as well as having a great mindset around a servant leadership mentality. So I think we can accomplish anything when we have the right people on the team.
Hi, everyone. My name is Steve Columbaris. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at Sotheby's. We bring art and cultural items to auction. Our clients are the ultra of the ultra high net worth, lots of sensitive data. We do broken records every year. We're the first auction house to take crypto as payment and get into NFTs. So it's an exciting, dynamic business. I've been there about just under 4 years. They brought me in to change the culture. I love building security programs and changing the culture and changing people's minds about things. So, Rebecca, let's change some people's minds.
I hope so. So first question up is for you, Michael. Companies are rapidly adopting the use of Gen AI systems and tools to keep pace with competition and to gain a competitive advantage. What considerations must be undertaken to, one, trust the applications, and two, trust the data sets?
That's a very interesting question for what it's worth. And so trusting the applications is kind of it all starts at the end of the day, I think, with your flows of data, where the different applications may very well consume your data from. And certainly, most recently, I've been hearing about faux pas. These new platforms are kind of like big data vacuums. They're greedy. They may go take information you hadn't necessarily wanted them to go take. So the controls, understanding how they may very well interact with your systems. In particular, I was considering one of the co-pilots. I heard some stories that it may breach security access rules and end up actually, I don't know, surfacing payroll information you hadn't imagined. And so a part of the notion of being able to trust the applications, these new ones that are coming in, is to get a good accounting of what source systems that they plan to tap into, what controls do you have on the data going into them, and also how you can lock them down. Probably the other thing to take into account, there's a kind of a flip side of that. I was talking to a partner just late last week, and these new kind of data consumption patterns may also trip off ransomware detection because they're sort of anomalous interactions and engagements with your systems. And so there's a flip side of it, which is by bringing in a new application, you may not trust it to not, I guess, cause false positives. So in order to get there, I think you probably want to try and understand the controls, understand your source data systems, what control systems you have on top of that, run it in a small pilot type environment to kind of see how it interacts and use that to kind of move on to next steps. And if you could repeat the second part of your question, that'd be great.
Second part was, how do you trust the data sets?
How do you trust the data sets? That is the problem of the ages, I would say. And it begins with thinking about, and in fact, I was just talking with a gentleman from Pragmatic Institute today, and they're obviously well known for marketing, product management, thinking about data now most recently. There's a great phenomenon in the data world called data products. development, and it's really the treatment of data as if it's a product by applying the software development lifecycle. And so in order to trust your data, if you think about going through that process of understanding you're building your data to be consumed, maybe even by an outside party, then what you're doing is you're coming at it with forethought, you're planning, you've got requirements, and you have an outcome that can be used in an AI framework or just a simple dashboard with the consideration that something's going to come behind you and use the data for a different purpose. And so with that in mind, you'll treat it like, oh, maybe I need to mask things. Maybe I need to make sure that I've removed certain data sets. Maybe I need to encrypt parts. Maybe I can't use it if it's very sensitive. And so I think approaching it like developing a product is a way to make sure that you can trust the data sets to be forward fed into Gen AI or any sort of platform.
Anyone else on the panel have anything they want to add?
Yeah, I always use the trust but verify with anything that you do. Start small. So whatever you're going to do, if you want, yeah, we're supposed to trust. Everyone says, I'm working with Change Health, and Change Health keeps coming back and saying, the application's good. We just put it back online. It's safe, right? Trust but verify. Make sure that it's actually saying what it's supposed to do, that you're verifying where it's supposed to have access, who's supposed to have access, and the type of data it's pulling in.
One thing I'd like to add is there are currently 27 different regulatory entities across the globe that are trying to change how we see AI, how we use data, how we consume data. So when we talk about using the current data sets and whether or not they can be compliant and support AI, I think we need to be very mindful of what those regulations are going to do and whether or not that's going to impact our business. So I'd say build a very agile environment, have a control board, have a group of privacy officers that can help you to discern what those new policies and regulations mean. Otherwise, we may not be able to leverage any existing data going forward.
And I would add, a lot of you have had to work out data maps, maybe data maps for GDPR, things along those lines. I really believe that you should have a data map for AI and responsible use of AI. We can talk about that at another time, another panel, another webinar, if you'd like to hear more about that. Great to do that. Scott, I'd like to ask you the next question. As companies integrate GI tools and systems into the work environment, how will this increase operational productivity and efficiency? And if you want to go also into the negatives, feel free to do so.
Sure. No negatives. It's interesting, right? We're a manufacturing company, so our thesis for AI is productivity. How do we create organizational productivity, right? So we're breaking that down as a pillar, going, okay, that's the outcome we want. We want to create productivity. We're seeing it really emerge in three spaces. One is personal productivity, kind of bottoms up. This is help. This is learning. This is, really kind of a whole stream of software and tools that are around help, learning, training, knowledge transfer. It was interesting. I was in a conversation with companies in the manufacturing industry. They said one of the number one things in manufacturing is aging workforce. And how do we overcome the fact that there's one, an aging workforce, and two, there's a new next generation workforce that may not want to do the jobs that other people were willing to do. And so how do we apply AI to productivity? Is an ongoing conversation. How do we apply it to factory productivity, equipment efficiency, operational efficiency, labor planning efficiency, yield and quality type outputs, right? That's a huge piece of activity there. So those are probably the two most important ones when we think about a factory. We think about, operational productivity, the third being quality and output of product, and then the first one being our workforce. How do we make them kind of more effective? I think the challenge is going to be operational productivity has a lot of metrics around it that we understand today. Knowledge productivity, if my employee is a little bit smarter today, is that, how do I measure that ROI? I think Satya said it really well. I was like, well, those people are going to be freed up to do smarter things. That's not a great CFO answer. It's like, are those people just going to have a better quality of work life? But, if they're more engaged, more happy, they're getting assistance, that's going to be a theme there. I really like what Microsoft has started, and it looks like others are following this concept of the co-pilot. The AI is not here to replace you. It's here to help you. It's an aid. It's an assistant. I think that's a much less threatening way for AI to deploy to workers and get them to go, oh yeah, this is here to help me, versus, oh, the AI is eventually going to displace me. That's of course going to happen at some level, but I think that actually is helping this knowledge, use case kind of move forward, where productivity will be easier to go because we've been measuring productivity in operations for years and years and years, and we've been measuring quality. So we'll be able to have better measures measures there. The more productive worker, the worker freed up from mundane tasks, the AI assisted worker, harder to measure, but certainly there's going to be value there.
Just because I know you deal very strongly in training up your team, how are you handling, the fear syndrome? People are fearful. Everybody should be fearful. Even CISO should be fearful that AI is going to take our job over. One of the things I tell people, those mundane tasks that you do consistently all the time, I'm trying to free up your thinking for higher level analysis work because AI will not be able to overtake that. But how are you dealing with that with your team, or how do you plan to handle that with your team if you haven't handled that yet?
We keep telling the funny story about what happened when spreadsheets, when Lotus 1-2-3 came into the market, or in Excel. We start thinking about history. In history as an indicator, because these technology trends will all have similar themes to them. We keep joking about what happened when did we just make more spreadsheets? Did we make smarter spreadsheets? Did we start to do more spreadsheets because we had more time? Like, what was that change curve like back then when that sort of simple technology that we use every day was invented? Did it displace massive amount of jobs from 10 key adding machine people? And so we talk about stories like that to say, yeah, it has a disruptive effect, but if you don't embrace it, that was our conversation. Look, the only way you really get displaced is if you refuse to embrace the reality that it's coming. It's going to be embedded in every software product. There's no software vendor I've talked about now that doesn't have an AI roadmap. They're immediately moving their help solutions into it, their call center solutions into it. There's no way to avoid it. So, if you try to avoid it, try hiding under a rock, you'll probably be the ones displaced. If you embrace it, lean into it. I told my kids, I was like, learn how to talk to AI when you're in school now. Like, learn how to structure a query. You're going to be, AI, you're going to be a generation of AI users, and you're going to have to understand how to get yield from these engines, which will all be, there'll be thousands of AI engines all wanting to help you. And it'll be how you interact with them most efficiently and effectively that makes a difference in your value, your personal value.
Before I open a panel, if you're looking for a good book on change management, dealing with disruptions, and you have not read Who Moved My Cheese, highly recommend you read it. Seems like anymore I have to read that every month because things keep going so quickly, but it's a great book. And the other thing, any point in time, you can be any one of those characters. So just mind you of that. So anybody on the panel want to opine? Yeah,
I've got a little bit to add on that. From personal experience, you have to think about what comes out of the AI. Because if you don't, you can end up accentuating bias. And here's a practical example of that. Imagine trying to get topics out of an interview that's transcribed. So you have, all the speakers and everything. And there's an interviewee and one or more interviewers. Well, if you don't remove the interviewers, naturally there's bias. And if you don't think about that at the output, like, oh, did I clean my data appropriately? What you're doing is you're measuring the unification of the person who interviewed, the person asking the questions, and the bias associated to the questions and the person answering them. And so I had to think about the process of, why did I confirm all of the things I thought? Because I measured myself. And a part of the process we're going through right now with AI is to think through that problem. So in this particular scenario, you had to eliminate the bias by removing a stream of data. Because that gets back to trusting your data in some way, shape, or form, and also trusting the AI and trusting the process. The machines need help, and the help comes from that.
Just really quickly, yesterday I was listening to an AI podcast. Yes, I'm that person. But they were talking about a company that manages apartment buildings. And they said they're starting to use this AI product so that if an elevator is out, the AI product helps the manager actually send emails out to everyone in their native language about what's happening, when they think the repair is going to be completed, and how it's going to inconvenience them. They say they can do it within a matter of minutes. That's a usage case of how this is effectively used. You take the fear away because you look at those things, those items that you don't have to worry about patient information or other health information. This is just getting basic information out to people. A fantastic use case.
Yeah, the replacing jobs part. I mean, it's Scott's right. We have to skill people to think about this differently, right? And to learn different skills. I don't remember his first name, but the computer science philosopher, right? Or here's someone I do know for sure. Peter Drucker used to say, right, computers are stupid. They do what you tell them to do. So if you go into it with that, and you think of it as, what's another thing someone says, Mike? They say it's like an intern, right? You have to double check an intern's work, right? Someone has to double check. It's not going to replace your job. It's going to make things a little bit easier, and history does repeat itself. This technology was called, what, BYOD, what was that?
Disasters.
Right. No, but what was that 20 years? What was that 20 years ago, Rebecca? Right. And then cloud, and then history just keeps repeating itself, and it's the skills to look at these things critically and get down to what the problem is. And we'll talk more about business and what their problem is, but there's when you distill it all the way down, there's a basic thing that's happening. And when you can recognize what it is at its basic level, you'll be able to understand the technology and what problems it brings. And always remember, history repeats itself. At the military academies, they study ancient battles. They don't use swords and shields anymore. But when you get all the way down to it, it's still, the thing is still the thing. So you demystify it. It's not scary. It's not. There's an explanation. Pull the curtain back.
I'll tell you one of the things that excites me at times, but makes me more nervous, is how AI very easily can be used to tweak people's resumes. I won't name the companies out there, but if you want to know who they are, happy to tell you outside here. And what they do is they say, go ahead and put the job description. Let us see your resume. And guess what? This is the resume you should submit in, because now it's going to get past all of their screening metrics. So what I go ahead, if I'm going ahead and helping companies go ahead and hire new talent, what I try to do, they don't always cooperate, but I want to see all the resumes that they're not looking at, because that's where I find the golden gems all the time. So be careful if you're not already being careful about that. They also can go ahead and say, hey, give me 3 great responses to this question, this question, and this question, based on the resume that I did submit into them. So I think one thing is we have to be even more diligent about gleaning people. How many people out there are on LinkedIn? How many people now use LinkedIn AI to generate all your content? I'm not going to read yours. No, but that's the thing is that becomes a danger too. One of the things is that we want to be thought leaders, and what do you think about things? So I just tell people, use AI responsibly. And I'll give you a quick example. I was on a live radio program, Voice of America, the other day, and the person didn't ask me the bio ahead of time, but if you do me on LinkedIn or Google me, my bio is out there, so I fear they just grab my typical speaker bio and my headshot, not a big deal. They're going on that I was the VP, CISO of Girl Scouts of America and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm like, am I being punked? None of that. They literally went to ChatGPT and said, give us the bio for Dr. Rebecca Wynn. So I did call them out live on the air as an example, but I said, if you are Girl Scouts of America, please give me my 3 years of past paychecks with interest. So there's another case. Well, try and be responsible and going ahead, and when you're cross-checking things, cross-check it even when you're dealing with people. And yes, I am Dr. Rebecca Wynn. You can take my picture and verify it. Miss Jill, how does Gen AI affect managing risk for the business and cybersecurity? And are there new paradigms that should be included in strategy and roadmaps?
Okay, thanks. First off, if you Google my name, you'll find Sean Hannity's ex-wife, who's also named Jill Rhodes. So that's why it's good to check. You know what? I'm going to talk about risk overall. Just out of curiosity, how many of you are CISOs or work security for your organization? Yeah, it's a lot of you. Number one, I would say we need to stop being afraid, especially of generative AI, because people are using it. They're starting to use it, and whether they're doing it in the work on your environment or they're taking their work home and doing it there, it's being used. Second, I would say let's take a look at it and say, how would we manage this if it were any other product being brought into our environment? So what does that mean? So one, you do a third-party risk assessment of that, right? Who is it that's bringing it in? What security controls do they have around it? How are they managing it? How is it connecting to my network? What is happening in my network? How are they bringing it in? Who has access to it? Who has access to it, and what kind of access to it do they have? And what are we doing with this? I just mentioned that situation with sending out letters, right? Are we using this to help us with everyday tasks to make our lives easier and free up our team members to do something that's more critical to business? Or are we using this because we want to get analytics over PHI? And if it's the latter, then what are all those additional controls that, as my colleague pointed out, there are regulations that we have to monitor, HIPAA regulations, other regulations. What is it that we have to monitor? How do we track it? What is our governance around all of this? What are the policies that we have in place? Just for the record, I did create our AI policy using ChatGPT. I did put a note on it afterwards, right? I did an initial, you're a lawyer, you want to create a policy for a healthcare company on AI. It popped out probably 80% of what I needed, and then I modified it. It's okay. I think most people found the same amount of humor that you did in the fact that I used that. What policies do you have in place? What education do you have in place for your team members? Because there is only so much that we can do technologically. If you talk to any of the security people in the room, they'll tell you their worst fear are the people who are clicking those phishing emails, right? And for AI, my worst fear are those people who are putting our code right into AI to see what they think of it, right? Samsung did that and they lost a whole bunch of code, proprietary code. So what are we teaching our team members and telling them, hey, this is what you can do. We want to support you. And this is what you can't do, and this is why you cannot do that. If you can give them the why, they'll get it. If you can give them examples, they'll get it. People generally, at least in my company, want to do the right thing, but they also want to work more efficiently. And we just have to set up, as security people, as IT people, set up a way that allows them to do that, that enables them, while remaining secure and remaining safe and keeping our companies, safe.
Yeah, I would add to that. I mean, it's unstoppable at this point. And so if you don't guide your employees into it, they're going to make their own choices. They're going to go home. They're going to use, so we are absolutely embracing the fact that, it was interesting 6 months ago, and this is so fast now in the world of tech. 6 months ago, stop, block ChatGPT. Wow, look at the IP that got out. The lawyers are like, oh my gosh, the board was really interested, right? We had to do an update for them. 6 months later, we have to guide our people into the way we want them to try and experiment with AI. Hey, if you're interested, use this. If you're interested, use that. Here are these tools that are coming with AI embedded. And we have horribly uncomfortable conversations with myself, our senior chief legal counsel, who says we can't, there's not enough, nobody's sued anybody enough yet to figure out what the point of view is from the lawyers, right? The lawsuits haven't happened, so there's no precedent, and therefore it's a Wild West from their perspective of risk. But our employees are going to go anyway. They're going to start updating resumes. They're going to be, and all of our products, all the software we rely on is embedding AI into their applications because they know they have to. And so we have to guide our people into it at this point because there's no holding back.
Yeah. Can I just do one use case? So our EDR, which is our endpoint detection response tool. And it started out as, your indicator compromise, or what are the signatures, right? And everyone was like, oh, we've got signatures. And then you wait for whatever malware to come out and everyone's like, get the signatures into the EDR, get it in. And then it went to behavioral. And we were like super excited because now it takes a look at your entire environment and says, what's your environment doing? And ooh, there's an anomaly over here. Let's quarantine that. Well, AI is going to blow behavioral out of the water because it's going to know Jill Rhodes does not come online at 4:00 in the morning generally on Tuesdays. What's going on here? And it's going to be able to quarantine that much faster and help us address our issues that much faster. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of things to add here. So one of the most common use cases, right, at least initially for AI, was let's go out and finish. Let's allow it to do our development for us. Let's allow it to finish our code. Let's allow it to scan our code. Let's allow it to do testing. Well, my former company, we're a software company. So if you're putting your content out there in a public version of OpenAI, you are putting potentially your source code out there. So it's the things that you need to consider as an organization really is around who owns the intellectual property. And to the points here made by my colleagues, is that there's so many cases that have yet to be filed, right? There's so much opportunity out there, whether it's the images that are coming, the generative AI conversations, who owns the IP, what happens to patents in this new world when many people are creating off of content that was posted publicly. So be aware of that. And really, to other points here, and this is going to become a common theme, make sure you're educating your organization on their responsibility, your associates, your employees, their responsibility as a purveyor of AI, or use of AI, they're responsible for the output of that. So if you don't put that on the table for them and help them to understand the impacts to the organization, you could be facing lawsuits as a company. You may have individuals that are facing implications and terminations and so on. This is the future of where we're living. Actually, it's not the future, it's today. And we need to prepare people for it.
Yeah, you're hearing a theme here, right? Jill started out in the beginning, she said trust but verify. And then she came up with guardrails. You heard about you can't stop it. You heard about alerts. You have to put out common sense, and you're not going to stop it. Put out common sense, check what folks are doing, tell them you shouldn't do this, and, do your research, right? You just heard Mike say, right? Do your research and know what these things do. There's nothing wrong with folks using it. Go and learn the different, here's an easy one. OpenAI has an enterprise version. You could buy it. You could put it behind your MFA. You could do two-factor authentication, right, on it. You could also tell it, don't learn from me. These are all options. So how do you get to yes? Instead of saying no, do the monitoring, come up with guidance, see what people are doing, educate them not to do it. Don't keep mentioning our company to ChatGPT. They're learning about our company, right? And learn what the options are, right? Learn what the products are, and you'll be able to get to yes, right? You want to get from uninformed risk acceptance to well-informed risk acceptance, right? That's just, how do you get to yes? What if it were easy? And you have to learn. You can't expect everyone else to read your mind, what you're thinking, what's wrong. You got to do the work. Go and learn all about it. Again, right? History repeats itself.
Yeah. One last thing on this. All of this education gets to the employee's benefit because there is severe lack of resource in the market. And so there's an investment in the employee through helping them understand the tools, the sensitivities to the data, thinking about critically what the outputs are. I believe there was a Pluralsight survey that came out not too long ago, and like 80% of executives and 72% of IT leaders believe that there was an overabundance of equipment and a severe lack of talent. So we're going to end up buying equipment, and we should have all just gone to Home Depot to buy a space heater because the benefit's the heat in the data center, right? So again, train your employees, let them know that this is to their advantage as much as it is to the safety of their company.
I would add, if you're an executive or a manager or a leader, or if you're a person who's just starting in AI, any of that, so the whole gamut, and you have not gone to, I just started saying TEDx. TEDx actually has some good talks. But if you haven't gone ahead and you haven't looked at edX, please do so. That's where you can get a lot of free courses from MIT, Harvard. There are 1-hour seminars on, basically, I'm a C-suite, AI, oh my God, what should I be worried about? A lot of great courses on there. If you want to go ahead and get an executive certificate, they do that really in the cheap as an individual well too. But a lot of times we think that we only can go to Azure or AWS or Google and get a vendor's perspective on a product. Remember, you do have stuff like edX. So I want to make sure you guys knew about that. Mr. Mike, hot seat. How do companies effectively monitor the use of AI tools and protect company sensitive data? Part one, being introduced into an AI model, so the outflow external coming into the internal, and how about they handle how they're being poisoned? Because if they're taking data out there that is bad, not clean data, bad code, and all that kind of stuff, and we're accepting it as like, hey, it's cool, and now we're either intellectual property or literally we just hosed ourselves. Technical term, ow.
Well, just like our children, right? We can teach them to say and do things that we believe are right. We could do the same thing with our AI engines. And having, again, coming from most recently from a software company, our intellectual property is software. So when we had the conversation initially around AI, the answer was, and show of hands, how many people in the room maybe had the same conversation? We've been doing AI for years. Why is this any different? Show of hands? Yeah. Well, AI has been around for a while, but the main difference is now it's in everybody's face, and our children, our grandparents, everybody's hearing about AI, and they expect it to deliver amazing results. They expect it to change society, and it will. So as a leader in the organization, whether you're in security, you're in IT, you're in the business, you can either grab a surfboard and ride the wave and enable the wave, or you can grab a life preserver and scuba gear and hope that you survive, right? The reality is you've heard a lot of it here. You heard a lot of the things that we need to do in an organization to put these pieces together and protect the company. One, establish policies. Make sure that you have policies. Make sure you have a cross-functional team that's working on those policies. It's not an IT policy. It's not a security policy. It's a company policy, and it includes legal. It includes your HR department. It includes privacy, IT, security, and also product teams. Because like it or not, no matter what product or what business you're in, it's going to end up somehow impacting what you do as a core business. So you should have some inputs from them as well. Be clear about the training. So we've heard this time and again here at the table. Make sure you have training. At our company, we actually made it mandatory. We created a training and we treated it like any other compliance training. We made it very clear that you, as an associate of the company, have this responsibility when it comes to AI. This is how you use AI. And then you look at your IT organizations, your security organizations, no different than what we've done in the past. Security first mindset when you're developing the code. Make sure you are hiring people that have Python experience. Make sure you're hiring people that know how to write LLMs, because that is going to be the area of the future, right? And our children are coming out of school with this capability already, right? A couple other quick things here. We talked about data a little bit, but if you're going to build your own environment, it's got to be secure. It's got to have clean data to begin with. You can't just assume that we're going to turn on AI and everything's going to be perfect. It has to have good data in, and you get good data out. Also, with the understanding that if you're taking an OpenAI platform, you're taking a Microsoft ChatGPT or Gemini, you're taking in whatever they already created or gathered over the last couple of years. So, got to be cognizant of that. Establish the controls, the telemetry around this as well. We talked a lot about the privacy aspects of it. You can train it, you can tell it, you can restrict it to what type of content can be put into it. You can prevent bias by blocking certain types of terminology. You can have controls about how people can write to AI, can train AI, and what they can and cannot say. But you don't want to be too limiting as well, right? So it's a fine balance. But the telemetry also around the technology. So AI is also very expensive as an organization. How many of you are using a cloud provider to host all of your data centers? Wow, not many. Interesting. We have to talk. I'd like to hear more about your on-premise data centers.
Or not.
But it can be incredibly expensive, right? Every one of these transactions is consuming a tremendous amount of resources. So make sure you have controls there around your consumption. Make sure you have telemetry. Make sure you're keeping a close eye on that as well. And then lastly, make sure that your organization, your IT organization, is shifting the balance now to an ROI first mindset, because AI is not going to solve every problem. ROI versus risk. What's the higher reward? Should we invest the time and energy on this or not?
Anybody like to opine? That was
I
really
think they're
thorough.
all great. I think we didn't talk much about how do you pay for this. It is a discussion we're having, right? Is this additive? It's additive to IT. We're going to spend more money either in hosting applications or queries or the cloud. I mean, that's why the cloud guys love this, right? That's why they're going crazy and investing in data center compute capacity and buying GPUs, because it's going to be a moneymaker. No way around it, right? Especially when you think about, we're going to toll you when you ask questions, and that's going to create compute, and then we're going to compile your AI brain, and that's going to create, more compute. It's an expensive proposition if it isn't managed effectively. So we in IT are going to end up managing this like we would network capacity or, flex data center capacity in the cloud. Those models aren't all mature yet. We can't predict how much AI we're going to consume, but it's going to, so it will normalize like we've managed managed to get the cloud under control in terms of a budgetary modeling perspective. But right now, a little bit crazy. So you do have to kind of keep having this sort of ROI conversation. I know my boss, everybody's CEO, all the boards like, well, we don't want to be late. We got to get in there. I'm like, well, yeah, we don't know how to pay for it yet. We're not sure. Again, back to what I talked about earlier about knowledge. If we increase the assistance we give our employees and they become more productive, does that create a better value proposition as a company? Hard to put the math together on that. That's hard math, but it's a conversation you got to have because it's really the only balancing point we have. The AI is coming. It's going to be expensive. We're going to pay for it. And so we have to continue to think about, okay, how does that balance itself out? And will that moderate our desire to just pour more AI in?
Well, I think there's also some mythologies that have been fueling NVIDIA's stock price. And the mythology is NVIDIA equals AI. Therefore, I must buy NVIDIA. And that is wrong.
It's all about the data, really.
It is all about, look, OpenAI hired programmers in South Africa to write code and go through the debugging process. So they own the data. So it is all about the data at the end of the day. You have bad data, you get to a bad AI outcome. But the important point about NVIDIA is you don't need to use them. Like there's a wonderful company, biggest chip in the world called Cerebras. And you can go talk to these companies for free. They'll give you a sales pitch and you'll learn a lot along the way. It's a 1 million core chip, single chip. Lots of ways to solve the problem from a hardware perspective. Intel's doing a wonderful job. There's free software to use their chips in a way that you don't need to go break the bank. You can use what you have on the floor and maybe have some software updates. Apple did a wonderful thing. Every laptop's AI enabled with some of their large language models. So be curious, challenge the status quo. AI does not equal NVIDIA. And we're about to be at GTC next week and have some announcements, right? So it's more than, it's a yes and. Be curious, be ROI focused. Maybe you don't need to do anything and just buy GitHub Copilot. That's fine. What is your task? What's your journey, vision, and ROI?
So one quick add-on. We're talking about data, we're talking about AI, but what about the impacts on what this may do to drive quantum computing to a whole new level? It's going to become necessary, right? If the whole world is going to be AI driven, then we're going to have a way to compute that. And I think there's going to be significant advancements, whether it's NVIDIA or somebody else. We need to keep an eye on those stock prices and maybe we can have the next .com boost.
Well, I just want to pull back to one thing that both of you talked about, modeling. It's so critical that you do modeling prior to bringing these tools into your network so that you understand, and not only for all the risk and security side, but for the financial side, especially if you're in the cloud environment. I was just thinking about that because we have both on-prem and cloud. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine the costs that will go up if we start having everyone use AI through our Microsoft cloud. So make sure you do your financial modeling before, and that will help also guide how you're going to do this and how you're going to implement.
All of our business folks are having conversations. They're on a golf course or whatever, and you're not using AI, and they're all embarrassed, and they come into a meeting, and they have all these solutions looking for problems, right? All of us here in this room, right? We can't fight back against that. You got to let that take its course. But there is a lot of that, right? So, pick your battles and prepare, like Jill was saying, right beforehand. There's these conversations have been going on forever. These are all, solutions looking for problems. A lot of the sales pitches also help the business people cut through the what. There's AI and then there's, if then else statements, but let it run its course, right? And do all the other things we've been talking about, just prepare them.
Just because we have been talking about Gen AI, we did talk about the new chips coming out there. If you have not checked out the new NIST standards on cryptology, you should really do so. That has now been made public. And yes, AES 256 and all that stuff is being blown out very, very quickly. People can differ if they think that's going to be 18 months, 3 years, 7 years, or 30 years, but it is coming. And so if you are doing long forecasting on looking at hardware and software and other refreshes and how you're going to protect your backups and stuff like that, you really need to check it out. I've worked quite a bit with the government on that as well, too. Happy to talk to you outside or get you with those resources. But I would tell you their tier 2 that was going to be published, one of those encrypted standards on the tier 2 was already blown out. So hopefully you're also paranoid, but in a very good way. Stephen,
this does have an AI standard as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
And
getting to
OWASP
that.
has the
Don't
top 10.
bust my last point.
I'm trying to help.
Stephen, for you, given all that we have talked about thus far, how can business align their resources to use generative AI, but still mitigate the associated risk?
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Rebecca. You know, everyone has kind of been talking about it the whole time. So how do you prepare them for AI? Well, you have to train them, you know, and with resources being tight, I'm a big fan of face-to-face. You have to be with people, right? And face-to-face, like, I think Zoom counts, right? I mean, that's face-to-face. And that's right, yeah, sort of. But so do it smaller then, right? You have to, you know, train and use real world examples. It's not about buying some content, throwing it on your LMS and just, you know, tracking and saying you didn't take that. I think you got to go talk to people. You have to understand who's asking to use, you know, whatever product to write new press releases, right? Don't assume it's the press team. There's someone else maybe talking to them. You know, have a thought about that, right? Sit and speak to them. You know, on our DLP, we put in a rule. I just wanted to see who is going to these different tools, who's trying to invite them to meetings, and who's trying to use them. I blocked the meeting one right away, but you know, who's using these things, and then I can see what department they're in. I can see what's going on and say, what are you guys trying to do? And then that gives me a better opportunity to customize what it is I want to talk to them about. Right? Use my tools and see what folks are doing. And I see a lot of people going on, we're picking on ChatGPT, poor Sam, right? He has enough problems. You know, people are going to ChatGPT and they keep saying Sotheby's. Well, I have one gentleman who's trying to help clients in a language different than what he speaks. And he's using ChatGPT to help him write better common responses because he wants to help. It's not his job, but he's like, hey, here's a better way to answer. And he keeps feeding it in. Well, the poor guy feeds in your company all the time, right? So, you know, you got to watch what else he's saying. Is it learning about your company? But that's an example, right? You use all the tools that you have. You give the right guidance. You adjust your guidance. You adjust your tone. You adjust what you're trying to teach folks. And you just got to stay on it. Just like you got to stay on, we stay on everything, right? What was the second part, Rebecca?
I think you pretty much covered. We were talking about how you can mitigate risk and how you can allocate resources responsibly.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, like, how do you get to, you know, there's an interesting, because we're you know, look at a lot of artwork, and I was speaking with someone about evaluating artwork, and they said, like, a statue, you put it in the room, and when they're looking at a piece of art, they're looking at it from all angles. So put it in the middle and walk all the way around it. Try to understand it from different perspectives, what other people are trying to do with it, how other people might perceive it. Because there's an angle that you know, we talked about bias. That's bias. You know, you're looking at it in your way. And when you hear me, I hear myself speaking to you and I hear music. You guys all hear noise. And I go, you guys have no taste. That's music. It's beautiful music. You're looking at it from how you see it. Put it in the room and walk around it. Learn what other people are doing with it. And then help them make better decisions about how to use the technology. And educate them, right? There's a difference, you know, between if then else, right, and AI. Those aren't the same thing. But they'll go and spend a lot of money on something that's just not AI and tell you it's AI.
Everything's AI now. Yeah, it doesn't matter what it used to be. It's all AI now. I think this is a crazy fun time to be a technology leader. This is why we do. This is what we're here for. If you end up being the person in the room going no, then you're just uninvited from the room. The technology's coming. You might as well, you know. So you just have to take. It's going to be risky. It's definitely crazy. That's our job, to get in there and go, this is risky. This is crazy, but we've got to lead the organization through it. And how do we do it? We teach people more effectively. We put in policy more effectively. We run pilots instead of diving into the deep end with some crazy spend. We use all the tools that we've had in our toolbook on all the other technology we've seen across our time. And we manage through, right? That's our job that we do for the companies we work for, is to, there's nobody better positioned in the company to help manage the risk and balance how to get to outcome than us. And so that's what our companies are asking us to do, right? So that's the nature of the job. That's why the job's fun. It's a little scary, but it's interesting. These are going to be some crazy times. I was talking to Mark this morning and he was like, yeah, remember when the internet first came out? And I said, oh, I remember. I saw the Netscape browser. It was spinning around. And I said, what does that do? And somebody said, we don't know. Don't worry about it. It came with your laptop. It's not going to be important. This is that time in AI, right? It's going to disrupt business models. It's going to change companies. It's going to be, I'm glad we're not a software company. It's incredibly difficult. If you don't have a roadmap for how you're going to harness this, you're going to be obfuscated. So yeah, that's why we're here. This is the fun part of what we do, is help our companies kind of form a point of view and be cautious and smart and pragmatic about how we got to go down this road together, because it's coming, right? There's no avoiding it.
Yeah, I would say it's here. Just to kind of rephrase a little bit what Scott just said, maybe instead of considering ourselves IT leaders, we start considering ourselves business leaders and think of it from the perspective that we bring, which is that technical security perspective. But now if we think of ourselves as business leaders, we get ourselves in the room with the people making those business decisions.
So as we start wrapping up here in the next 10 minutes, what I want to do is each one of us give a tidbit or words of wisdom to help you bring your programs further along without hopefully spending zillions of money that, if you're like me, budgets are pretty set and very minimal. My tidbit for you is, NIST does have the AI framework, the risk framework. It is free. They have a whole resource section up there. If you haven't gone up there, go up there for that. They have free training tools. If you are a small business who is doing stuff in AI, they have grants that you can apply for. If you are a student or a young learner, they're also go ahead and they have scholarships. It doesn't hurt to go ahead and try. The worst case scenarios, they say no. And then we have over the European Union, right? ENISA, they have their cyber, everyone's like, they have their cyber rules. Yeah, and they have more adaptions, but they also go ahead and they have checklists and how you can put this in responsibly. So don't always harness yourself to only look at what's happening in the US. See what's also happening over the European Union. Australia has some good stuff as well as Canada. But use these resources and write the letter. Reach out to people like us on LinkedIn and say, hey, we have this challenge. If you can't help me personally, who can you point me to who perhaps can help us?
Be contrarian. How can you do AI with no investment? It sounds funny, but I run a startup and I don't have any money. And I'm doing AI without any investment at bootstrapping a company. So I think be contrarian, challenge your people to use what's on the floor. There's a wealth of free tools. There's a wealth of free things to give it a shot with. Just make sure you're aware of what they're doing, but be contrarian. Don't buy from crazy companies. Think about different ways to solve problems. Qualcomm's making AI chips, right? All sorts of different ways to solve the problem, but be contrarian, try and figure out how to do it with no money to start. Eventually then get to your ROI.
Use history to your advantage. This is new tech. We've seen new tech. This one's an interesting one and crazy because it's coming from all angles, but it's new tech. We've gone through this before. I've started to use buy versus build with my executive. Like, we need to go get something. We need to buy AI. I'm like, well, what do you mean buy AI? And I was like, you know what? There's going to be places where AI is embedded in the packages we already use. That's an advantage to us. Our people are used to using them. The data is understood by those packages. So there's going to be we're going to buy over here and over here. This is a space we'll probably have to build. So use things that you've used in the past to kind of bring those stories and give them grounding as you're talking about those narratives with your customers. That's how we're starting to get a more simplified conversation, which is aligning kind of where we're going to make our bets.
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues here. I would also say, I call it using 100% of the tech's brain power. So how many tools do we already have out there that we're only using about 80% of its brain power? What is the other 100%? And again, I think many of the tools that we already have are starting to implement AI. So definitely leverage that. I would think for other things, just kind of as a key takeaway, just make sure, as we've talked about, get those policies in place, educate your people, manage it as any other tool you would manage coming into your environment. Use the exact same process to manage it. And the bottom line, don't forget, this is supposed to be fun. Right?
Awesome.
Well, at the risk of sounding like my peers here, I definitely just want to reiterate that you have to start with the ROI and value that versus risk. And there's a philosophy that comes out of leadership, right? And this isn't unique to AI, which is go out and do it with no cost. Whether you're a startup or an enterprise, go do it with no cost. Save money, save money. AI now carries everything's going to be saved, right? We're going to be able to reduce headcount. We're going to be able to save money here, save money there. The reality is, if you can prove to your organization that yes, there will be savings, but I need to have those savings so I can reinvest in the security, the policies, the talent that we need to be able to drive the business forward. Save to reinvest is the way to go, at least at this early stage, mid-stage with AI. Also be mindful of that rapidly changing regulation, right? Just this morning, there was a bill passed around TikTok, right? Regulators don't necessarily know it and live it and breathe it like we do every day. So we have a bunch of people in Washington or in the European Union or somewhere else that are telling us what we need to do with the technologies, not necessarily the most skilled or talented people to be able to do that. So hopefully they're not going to be able to bring us to a point where we can't take full advantage of it, but always be mindful of it. And the last thing I'll say is start a governance board. Have a cross-functional board within your team. Don't be so restrictive that people can't do their work, but have the right people there to be able to address these issues when they come up, because it's going to happen pretty quick. AI is moving faster than anything else we've ever seen, at least myself in my professional career, and we need to be that enabler, right? And if we're going to enable the business without putting the business at risk, we need to have legal, we need to have data privacy, we need to have human resources, product, IT, security, et cetera, as a part of a committee on an ongoing basis, because it's going to change that quickly. Former company, we were meeting once a month, and we accelerated that to once a week because of the rapidly changing demand of AI. So thank you for your time, and I really appreciate allowing us to be here today.
And I'm sorry you won't be able to get my TikTok dance videos anymore.
Thanks, everyone. I think, look, when's the last time someone was this excited about what you do or what you can do for them? This is it now. So educate yourself, right? Get involved. Take those vendor calls, right? That's another way to learn. That counts for CPEs, right? You sit through a vendor presentation. So, think about it that way, right? You're saying, oh no, these dummies want to use AI. No, they're interested in all of your big, beautiful brains. When's the last time they cared about what you did or what you can do for them? Take the opportunity, get involved, educate yourself, learn about it, learn what's going on, and then flip that over to everyone that you deal with. Because if you really know something, you should be able to teach it easy. And this is easy. They don't care about how you reduce noise in a static code analysis tool. That's too complicated. Most people aren't going to get that. But this is easy. They talk to it, it gives it back an answer. They click on a link, they click on the icon, and it gets them to a web page. No one has ever been, well, all my security people are going to say they were interested in me on the last incident, but they're all interested in what you do and what you could do for them. Take advantage and use resources, get involved. Events like this, all of us here, meet everybody here, right? All of us up here, get involved, go to the vendor meetings, go to the websites, get the education. If you don't like the way a vendor's product is working or the way it's presented to the business, right? Well, that was a terrible presentation. We're not going to be able to buy that. Well, did you give them that feedback? Are you helping them sell it better? Or are you helping them not scare everybody every time they get on a call? It's your time.
I want to thank the panelists for being here, ElevateIT for having us, and you guys all joining us. One thing I want to leave you with, hearing things and knowledge to yourself is great, but knowledge only can make a world impact if you apply it and you share it. So as you go through this conference, try to pick out 3 great golden nuggets that you can take back to your work areas and make an impact. And if you're not working, you're retired, congratulations. But you can still make an impact to your loved ones by protecting yourself better around your home and using AI responsibly. So really try to think about what are 3 things that you can do and that you can make the world a global better place like us. Remember, the bad guys have to be fortunate ones. We have to be lucky all the time. So all of us, CISOs and security engineers and network engineers, anyone else, It's all of us. It's one team, one mission. So with that, have a great conference and thank you for being here.